Good evening again, everyone. This is Lowman02. I wanted to go through a quick two matches, really just because I wanted to kind of showcase one of the Storm decks that I continue to work on. I don't think it's quite there yet, but we have an interesting game here between Sung prior to the Christmas extravaganza we ran. With me on Storm and her on a bug mid-range deck. So you'll see kind of an unconventional hand, but this is a solid keep for this deck specifically. A lot of weird, kind of like non-ideal cards in this hand, but you know, when you're trying to play Storm in this format without any of the draw sevens, you tend to have to play some odd cards. Let's just say that. So we see her Visions turn one, see a Giga Drowse and Snapcaster on top, put the Giga Drowse on bottom, Snapcaster on top. The idea being eventually we'll be able to make either a ton of mana with it or get through a ton of cards by recursing our Cabal Ritual or something like that. So we end up going for, I believe, an Impulse at end step here. Yeah, I think, we end up taking the Goblin Electromancer. If we have our next land drop, we draw a Mox Diamond, which is not an ideal draw. Play out the Electromancer. I believe we get Liliana here. Yeah, so we get Liliana. I think she gets rid of this thing. We end up playing the Pure through Depths before she can get rid of it. Take the Dark Petition because it is live with the Dark Ritual in hand, plus we're going to be discarding a bunch of cards to Liliana. Play out the Snap to force his hand with removal. Tap our her mana with removal. End up pulling a Nightscape for the turn, discard the Mox Diamond, which had no more lands. End up getting lucky, finding a land off the top. Play the Nightscape out. I believe look for a Vault Island. Play out the Mana Flare, which is going to definitely up her mana count quite a bit. Now, interesting pull here by her. She takes the Sleight of Hand. I guess she doesn't respect our hand or our Dark Petition, which is actually a very strong card. Like, any tutor effect in this deck is very strong. So like I said, we don't have a lot of draw sevens. I think we end up burning out the Liliana this turn. We find the Past in Flames, which, if she wants to make us discard that card, that's fine by me. I think we end up seeing she doesn't even use her Liliana because it's kind of irrelevant. She's just losing a card for me to put a card that has flashback anyways. Now, she ends up countering this. I can't remember what it's. Yeah, Force of Will. She casts a Force of Will on it. We preordain, find the Telling Time. I think we end up leaving. No, we end up putting the land on bottom. We burn out the Liliana. She just starts attacking in for 4 damage, which is fine with me. I got time. Alright, then click. We're kind of unhappy to see that happen because she gets our Candelabra. It's cool though because we do get another land, and this deck always wants to make its land drops. It's a 28 land deck, so making a land drop in return is really relevant. We end up time spiraling here, which eats up our graveyard, but gives us an untap and allows us also to manage to find a High Tide. We get a strategic plans off of a Forbidden Alchemy, play out the Seagate, take the Mox, put the Mox into play, strategic plan. Turn about all of our lands with Pact Negation backup, and we've already seen our hand at this point in time, so I believe we played a Peak. We tend to return for lethal damage. I think it's like something like she's a -10 or something like that after this resolves. So we end up taking game 1 on turn 8, which, I think realistically, and there was disruption in this game, but I think realistically this is like a turn 6 to 8 deck. Storm out, unless you have a really high variance draw. Again, it's 100% Singleton, but there's a lot of manipulation in this deck. It's all manipulation, essentially. It's either all manipulation or ways of finding it or mana is what you got pretty much in this build. So we take game 1 in this match. I don't feel like we're unfavored in this matchup. However, you see the hands kind of play out like Sung gets some very, very good disruption in this game and then next. I think we see Liliana twice during this match. We end up getting something like hit with him to Turek twice in the following game. So she gets a Satyr Wayfinder, which I'm thinking at this point she's probably got some sort of Reanimator package. Now, I'm kind of shocked she didn't take more of her critter removal out. We don't run a lot of critters, but we get Maelstrom Pulse here. We force a Will It just because Thing in the Ice is kind of instrumental with staying alive. We do play our Brainstorm, so we're looking for an additional land. Ideally a fetch land. We do find one. We end up putting the Bob down, so we can start drawing. We know we're going to take damage off the next turn, but she has a fetch land, Brainstorm, powerful play. dismembers our thing, and then kills all the creatures with Golgari Charm, which we're kind of happy to see. Not the ideal turn to cast Frantic Search, but we're kind of hunting right now. We do have a Magus. She ends up respecting it and removing it, although right now it's not really that great. She don't have a ton of mana production inside the graveyard. We end up going for our Grim, play on our Jace, and, you know, disappointedly again, it gets killed. So she ended up keeping a lot of creature removal in here, which, you know, this hand did not pair up well against. So we attempt to cast Nature's Ruin. It gets countered. We're pretty sure at this point we're just going to die. We're getting attacked for 8, and the next turn is lethal. It's 8 and 8. We anticipate to see what we can find. She counters with a Mana Leak, and that's just game. I think we pack it in. Yep. In the third game, so, you know, you can kind of see, like, that was a hand that just didn't pair up well against removal. I think if we had, you know, a far less creature-dependent draw, so we had a lot of good creatures in that, or creatures that are good in this deck, in that hand, we would have seen us to be more successful in it. You know, I don't think I'm personally favoring this one, but this game is just a beating. So we play the Duress. She has a Force of Will. She pitches a Baleful Strix to Force of Will, which I'm thinking, like, you just gave up 3 cards. What is in your hand? And we're soon to find out. We end up getting him to Turek this next turn. Or she found him to Turek. I don't know. But it ends up being a huge time beating. So we impulse first, just to put the impulse. So the idea behind impulsing there may seem kind of silly, is that we want to get as many cards in the graveyard as we can, because if we ever, our win con is essentially, you know, storm through use of the graveyard by, I was going to call it Burning Wish, Past in Flames. So we have a pretty healthy graveyard. We see Liliana and we're like, gosh, you know, can we catch a break? And then we get Snapcaster Hymned, and that's just it. Right now we're just kind of doing this for lulz. We're having fun making mana. We make a bunch of mana and then lose our Perish, because the Wall of Blossom is not something we really care to perish. So it doesn't really matter if we save it or not. I think it's still relevant. We preordain, dump the 0 mana counter to the bottom, keep the land, because right now what we're trying to draw to is, so we need to hit our marks extremely well. We're trying to get a draw 7, which there's only really one in the deck, and that's going to be the Time Spiral. On curve, so we don't want to hold it in hand because we have a Liliana, and now that became like pretty much mission bad possible with Jason play, because she's going to Fate Seal us every turn for 0 cards. We do manage to draw Fetch Land, which is like kind of a best worst. It allows us to, you know, if she keeps going on top, we can filter it off. But with Liliana, like, you know, we're pretty much Time Spiral or bust right now. That's all we have going. We see the Relic and we're like, well, all that stuff in the graveyard is gone, which includes our Tendrils. So now we're forced to essentially win with Empty the Warrens, you know. So we try to Nox Revival to force our hand with the Relic, which I think is the right play, and it does. So we just take 2 damage for nothing. But, you know, to be honest, I don't want to get to a game state where I draw a card like Past in Flames and, you know, can't use it. So yeah, we play on the Magus for lulz. She kills it, and she asks, "Hey, can I take a look at the deck?" And she wants to max her Jace out, so we just let her do it. She doesn't attack. That's why she doesn't attack us there. Takes a look at our deck and then passes it back to us while kills us. So if you're interested in the deck, I'll pull it up briefly. It's an interesting build. This is a Grixis version of the deck. I've tried a couple different variants. One of them involving green to enable like the like Regrowth, Eternal Witness, Root Awakening, and Heartbeat of Spring package. And that would be, I think that's called the Perfect Storm Greed remix. This is the ModerateStorm. The ModerateStorm is just a Grixis deck. You can see it's very low curve, high deck manipulation deck. There's a couple cards I think probably come out. Ancestral Visions being one of them. It's just really slow. You know, a lot of the cards you want to have in this deck, you want to spend minimal amount of mana on. And you're not, so you're using your cantrips really to find lands and build up your graveyard. The idea is you're building up graveyard in order to utilize Past in Flames in combination with a card like High Tide to make mana. And there's a couple ways, there's a couple different High Tides in the deck. High Tide is the most efficient means in the deck. We run a lot of islands. We are a Tainted Pack deck, so we did do the Snow Island, regular island mix. But very low land count, so you're using a lot of the trips that are in the deck. There's a couple cards that are questionable. I think Giga Drowse could probably come out. not a fan of it anymore. But there's a lot of trips in the deck that allow you to get to your lands and build up the graveyard. That's kind of what you're going after. And then the other part of the deck, outside of the trips, is some minor disruption in the form of hand disruption. So you have like 2 or 3, you have a correction 5 or 6 ways of looking at the opponent's hand. So ball therapy is actually pretty live. Although on the replay, sometimes you randomly get it with the Pyromancer, but I mean typically it's not a thing. Because if the creature counts 13 in the deck, and really a lot of them are not actually even creatures. The rest of it though is just mana. So you look at it and we're looking at enabling our lands to tap for multiple mana. So Candelabros is good. Rain of Filth kind of does the same thing. You have the Dark Ritual package. You have the red mana package, the one-time mana package. And then you have the other cards, like blue cards, that kind of do the same thing, like Snap, which is kind of an innocuous card, but I mean, it's an untap effect. So if you have, one of the, the Flare type abilities in play, you're able to use cards like this to make mana. And that's really why you see cards like Frantic Search in here as well, because you want to build up your graveyard. Even though it's not card advantage, it's actually card disadvantage. It can tend to be mana advantage in this deck right here. One of the big weaknesses of the deck right now is that we've opted to take out all of the good draw 7 cards. So cards like Windfall, Time Spiral is power, so I kind of understand that. Wheel of Fortune, Memory Jar, which Memory Jar is more questionable, but I think if it was legal, I think we'd probably play it in here. But all those cards are just unavailable to us, so it's tougher with a build like this because you're relying on some suboptimal draw 7. So we do have Magus the Wheel, which is it is a draw 7. It's actually cheaper the turn you play it for that effect than Wheel of Fortune is. We could play cards like the Miracle version of Wheel of Fortune. I forget what it's called. I forget, something Fate. I don't know. Fiery Fate. I don't remember. But it's having to be dependent upon it happening when you need it to happen is very tough. So you just random into this thing turn 3 and not have built up your graveyard to where you want it. And I don't think it's as good there. I think a card like Wheel of Fortune is just a lot stronger. So that's a thing. So, and then we have Fate, Correction, Time Spiral. One of the cards you see we don't have in here, we've played around with it, and it probably should get back in there, is Palancron. Palancron, obviously, once you get there with it, it can just make infinite mana and cast itself infinite times, which gives you infinite storm count. It's very time intensive, but I think we could probably take a card like Giga Drowse out. Giga Drowse, it just doesn't really do it in here. I love replicate effects, and a deck like this, they can just make tons of mana once it gets there. But and what the idea behind this is an anti-counter or counter spell package. But I think it get out because we do have some decent counter magic in the board. But really, what you see is more so we've just put cards in there that forestall the opponent closing the game out on us, and we have a random upside card like Notion Thief. So I think what we probably need to relook in this deck is we probably need to put a Planeswalker package in. We probably need to have a Dak Faden in here at a minimum, if not a Jace the Mind Sculptor. But Jace, I'm not as keen on because this deck doesn't put its hand, it doesn't protect itself. This deck just takes a beating and then wins out of nowhere. So I'm not as big a fan of Jace, even though it's a great card. I think Dak is more, I'm more capable of rationalizing that because of the fact that it comes down a turn earlier. And on the play, I think it's very viable. It's a very strong card in that case. So, there's a couple of things we look to build into it. There's a couple of cards that could probably come out. Like I said, Giga Drowse is being one. Because it's very dependent on color mana, I've definitely considered putting in a card like Grim Monolith in the deck. It's one of the few pieces of it's one of the few cards that make mana the turn it comes into play. Artifact style cards. Because the typical package of Sol Ring, Mana Crypt, the actual Factual Moxen, the Black Lotus, all those cards, Mana Volt, they're all banned in this format. So this is a tougher build, one of the tougher builds I've worked on. I think, it's probably within 1 to 2 cards, at least in this section of the color pie. I think you want to be on 3 color if you're going to play Storm because, there's you need blue. Like, you definitely need blue. I mean, as you can tell, like, blue is what allows this deck really to run because it allows you to manipulate the deck to a very high extent. And I think you want black and red because they just make so much fast mana for a very cheap cost. Green tends to do the same thing, but it's a little slower, and there's just not as much depth to it. And I think it's probably faster than black. It has more busted fast mana, and it has more depth of busted fast mana than black does, but it doesn't have the tutor effects that black has. So maybe the right answer is we relook the red package, but then we don't have. So we basically have 2 graveyard recursion spells. We have Magus of the Will, which basically says suspend for 3 Yogg Will. The following turn, you're still going to pay for it. Which is it's risky. I mean, it's a flying body. It's a 3/3 for 3. But really, what you're looking to do with this is the Yogg Will effect. And then we have Past and Flame. So like I think red is extremely relevant here. And empty is also a great secondary win con because stuff does have a tendency of getting exiled out of the deck. I'm going to draw something we can look at. We've tried playing around with them. This is diminishing returns, but I just found there's the initial, well, not the initial, but maybe the 8th or 9th build I did of this, or rebuild I did of this deck. Played diminishing returns, but I found out that I was using a technique that was illegal. I didn't find out in tourney play. I found out just kind of in casual matches. So I had a Burning Cunning Wish package that allowed, or that what I had done was reduce the board down in hate cards or in cards that are good against matchups that I'm worried about. And I put an additional High Tide, Tendrils of Agony, and I think extra High Tide, extra Tendrils of Agony, and a couple other critical cards for the deck. I think it was an extra Past in Flames. But I think, well, I know it's illegal now, and I can see how it would be because it's hidden information, and I could, if I wasn't going to be honorable about things, realistically, put 2, let's say, Past in Flames or 2 Tendrils or 2 High Tides in the deck, and no one would be the wiser for it unless they cast a card like Bribery or Praetor's Grasp or something like that to look through my library and be like, hey, why do you have 2 of these in here? I wouldn't do that, but it's illegal. So the Wish package came out, and that I actually kind of liked that build the best. It was a very, I mean, obviously because it's just more redundant. It also allowed me to play diminishing returns pretty safely and not have to worry about exiling all the pieces that I needed to find the actual win con for the deck. Because as far as making mana and getting cards in the yard, this deck can win on 4 lands. Is that the easiest way to win? No. You generally want to be on 5 or 6 lands. But once you get 6 lands, you are generally at a point where, I mean, 1, you can cast everything in the deck, and 2, you can generally win from that point because of the high volume of mana you can make and the mutability of the deck itself. The ability to, essentially stack your deck is very high in a deck like this. It's a very fun deck. Had a fun game against Stsung, and we'll show one more match. This is a deck you already know. We actually just ended up playing it in the Christmas event. It's Death and Taxes versus SugarDaddy, who's on some sort of 5-color greedy deck. We have a strong keep here with a Weathered Wayfarer. Swords of Plowshare is good remove for anything. He does what 5-color greedy does and gets two lands. He got Esper Colors, plays out in the Tidehole Sculler, takes our removal. We search for land here, get a Wasteland, take care of his black mana. Plays a Reflecting Pool, which, cool, whatever. I think we end up getting just a Dust Bowl here. We're playing on an alternate land and then playing our Sense Tactician. He memory lapses. I think I briefly consider if I want to shuffle the library before I draw it. And I say, I'll draw it. It's fine. I play the Banisher out. And the reason was because he played the Jace. So I play the Banisher, attack him with the Weathered Wayfarer. He ends up not replaying Jace out. He plays an Isochron Scepter, which I'm fine with because I'm kind of hoping to stall him, out-tempo him right here. And cast again, which I cast again, and this game is, we'll let it play out, but it's over at this point. I think he's hoping he can beat me because I'm at a lower life total when the Geddon turn starts, but my ability to cast relevant threats on very low land counts is a lot better than his. We also have a Rishport that he doesn't even know about yet in our hand, which is just going to, lock him up. It's going to keep him off getting that miscalc value off the Isochron Scepter. I'm not a huge fan of Isochron Scepter. You know, it can randomly be good, but like if it gets removed, you get so busted. It breaks you so hard because you're just down 2 cards, down a bunch of tempo for a card that doesn't really do much the turn it comes into play unless it comes in the late game. And then if it's coming in late game, like you're already probably winning because you're not casting the cards that you can put on it that are relevant because you've already been casting them if you're in a fight. So it's not a come from behind card. It's like a win more card to me, and I'm not a huge fan. I guess it can randomly be great. I mean, you could get like an orange chain on there and like they're just never gonna cast a spell again or something like that, you know. But not a huge fan. So game 2, I don't quite remember this game. Okay, so we have a pretty slow hand, but we have some disruption. And we draw Geddon, which hey, cool. We got a Geddon. We play the Flagstones down here, if I'm not mistaken, attack him for our measly 1. I think what we're hoping to do is all right, so we get Thoughtseize. He takes Thalia, which is weird to me. I'm assuming he must have another discard to take care of Geddon. We don't see it, so cool. Attack him for a 2. He passes it back, so no lands. Interesting. Well, you're gonna get Geddon, man. And I don't think he may like top counter or something like that, or maybe he just straight up counters it, which is still fine. Yeah, he leaks it. Cool. You know, but he's not making land drops, so I'm just beating on him. You know, not for a while. He plays an Island Sanctuary out. It's not active this turn, so I strike in there. And we end up getting a Dust Bowl underneath that, which is good because it's going to allow us to continue to mana stream. So we're not in any way, shape, or form hurting on lands. He doesn't skip his draw, so we're going to beat him there. And it's for significantly more now because you have the Boros Elite. Play out the Dust Bowl. He doesn't hit his land, I guess, and because he hasn't skipped his draw for the Island Sanctuary, that's just game. So I hope you enjoyed the matches. Kind of want to show you that Storm matchup against Stsung. I think it's a very fun deck. And you know, I'd be curious from folks in the field. I don't know if you guys study this form of Magic that much. You know, any ideas that you may have to help make Storm a viable thing. And I don't know what's going to happen with the bans or unbans. I kind of hope we get some more cards because I do want to play that deck. I just don't think it's viable right now. I think it's just going to get trounced. It gets beat up on by so much. But it's a very fun deck, and I'd definitely take it in if I thought it was playable. All right, hope you enjoyed it, and take care now.